Welcome to today's lesson, Dividing Decimals by Decimals. Today we're going to use a couple different methods to practice dividing decimals. Let's go ahead and get started. We are going to begin today by working on a word problem together. Lizzie needs 6/10 yards of fabric to make a scarf. How many scarves can she make if she has 2 4/10 yards of fabric? Well, as you can see, we already have 2 4/10 yards of fabric shaded in on our screen. We need to see how many groups of 6/10 we can create out of 2 4/10. I'm going to go ahead and write this as a division problem. We have 2 4/10 in all, and our divisor, the number we're dividing it by, is going to be 6/10. All right, our first step, looking at our diagram, is to split each of these into as many groups of 6/10 as we can. But these are in wholes, so we need to split all of these into tenths. There we go. Now we are going to shade in different groups of 6/10 and see how many groups we can have shaded in. I'm going to shade my first group in red. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/10. I'm going to shade in my second group blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/10. My next group I'm going to shade in green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/10. And my last group I'm going to shade in yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/10. Look at that. We have an exact number of groups. We have 1 group, 2 whole groups, 3 whole groups, and 4 whole groups. So sometimes you can use your area model to be able to divide decimals. Let's check this out using our algorithm. When you're trying to divide decimals, one thing that you need to do is change your divisor into a whole number. You can do this by multiplying it by a power of 10. So 6/10, if we move our decimal 1 place value to the right, which means we're multiplying it times 10, that will give us a value of 6 wholes. Now, since we multiplied our divisor by 10, we also have to multiply our dividend by 10. So we move our decimal 1 place value to the right, which means we're also multiplying it by 10, and that gives us a value of 24. Now, wherever our decimal lands, we then put that into our quotient. So let's start dividing. 6 divided by 24 equals 4 wholes. And that's perfect because we also received 4 wholes when we created our area model. So if Lizzie needs 6/10 yard of fabric to make a scarf, and she has 2 4/10 yards of fabric, she can make 4 scarves. Let's go ahead and try a practice problem together. What is 6 3/10 divided by 2/10? Remember, our first step is to change our divisor into a whole number. So I'm going to shift our decimal point over 1 place value, which means I'm multiplying it by 10. Since I multiply my divisor by 10, I also have to multiply my dividend by 10. All right, let's rewrite this problem to make sure it's organized. We are now dividing 2 wholes divided by 63 wholes. All right, let's start working through this problem together. Our first step with this problem, when we've moved our decimal place value over, is to place it in our dividend and then move it directly into our quotient. That way we don't forget to do it later and we make sure it's lined up appropriately. Now we can go through and divide. 2 can go into 6 3 whole times. 2 times 3 equals 6, and when I subtract out, that gives me a remainder of 0. Now I bring down my second digit, which is a 3. 2 can go into 3 1 whole time. 2 times 1 equals 2, and when I subtract down, that gives me a remainder of 1. But we're working with decimals. We don't want a remainder. So now we're going to place a 0 in our tenths place and bring down our next digit. 2 can go into 10 5 whole times. Now notice my 5 is lined up with my tenths place past my decimal value. 2 times 5 equals 10, and when I subtract out, that gives me 0. So 6 3/10 divided by 2 tenths equals 31 5/10. Let's try a word problem together. Ryan is conducting an experiment in science class. He needs 45 hundredths liters of water divided equally into test tubes with 3 hundredths liters of water in each tube. How many test tubes will he need? Let's start by setting up our problem. Our dividend is going to be 45 hundredths liters of water. Our divisor is going to be the groups of 3 hundredths liters of water in each group. Now remember, our first step is to change our divisor into a whole number. That means we need to move our decimal place value over 1, 2 place values, which means we need to multiply it by 100. And if we're multiplying this by 100, we also have to multiply our dividend by 100. So I'm going to move my decimal value 1, 2 places over, and now I'm going to rewrite my problem. Now I'm going to be dividing 3 wholes as my divisor and 45 wholes as my dividend. So once again, my first step is to place my decimal in my dividend and move it directly above into my quotient so that I don't forget to do that later. All right, let's divide. 3 can go into 4 one whole time. 3 times 1 equals 3, and when I subtract out, that gives me a remainder of 1. So now I can bring down my 5. 3 can go into 15 5 whole times. 3 times 5 equals 15, and now I have zeroed out my equation. Now, it's important to realize that we still have our decimal place value here. This is representing 15 wholes, because all of the numbers to the left of a decimal are whole numbers, and all the numbers to the right of a decimal are parts of a whole. So that means that Ryan is going to need 15 test tubes. Let's review what you've learned in today's lesson. We're going to start by using the example 5 9/10 divided by 2 tenths. Remember, when you're dividing decimals, your first step is to turn your divisor into a whole number. So we need to change 2 tenths into a whole. To do that, we're going to multiply by a power of 10. So we're going to shift our decimal point over one place value until 2 tenths becomes a whole number 2. We do that by multiplying by 10. Since we multiply our divisor by 10, we also have to multiply our dividend by 10 as well. So let's go ahead and rewrite this problem. We now are going to be dividing 59 divided by 2. All right, let's go ahead and make sure we start by placing our decimal point and also moving it above to our quotient so that we don't forget it later. 2 can go into 5 2 whole times. 2 times 2 equals 4, and then when we subtract out, that gives us a remainder of 1. So now I can bring down my 9. 2 can go into 19 9 whole times. 2 times 9 equals 18, which once again gives me a remainder of 1. So I don't have any more place values to bring down, so now I need to go into my decimal values and put a 0 in the tenths place. 2 can go into 10 5 whole times. 2 times 5 equals 10, and when I subtract out, that gives me a remainder of 0.